Hey guys, tonight we rise before the rooster step quietly into a palace kitchen, larger than most towns, and prepare to serve an emperor who might not even notice you exist unless you get the ginger wrong. You wrap your hands in cloth against the chill, stare at the glowing embers of a thousand-year-old stove, and realize you're already behind schedule. It's going to be a long day. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The kitchen wakes before the court, before the eunuchs start whispering orders, before the emperor opens his eyes to dream about bamboo shoots and perfectly steamed buns. You're part of a team, a massive humming organism that runs on rice starch sweat and fear of disappointing the most powerful man in the country. You trudge through the dawn haze with your sleeves rolled up, and your fingers already itching for the chopping block. It's still dark, but fires flicker alive in every corner, and someone's shouting about duck gizzards again. A good sign. You're in the right place. This is not a cozy kitchen. No fireplace, no apron tied with a bow. This is a culinary machine. There are hundreds of cooks, each with a specialty so narrow it borders on absurd. The man to your left only steams buns. The one to your right has carved radish roses for 12 years and still says he's almost decent. You slice aromatics, ginger, garlic, scallions. That's it. All day, every day. Your thumbs smell like root vegetables and ambition. The Imperial schedule is relentless. 3 main meals, 5 snacks, seasonal extras, and a pre-dawn health tonic that somehow always includes dried goji berries and despair. By the end of the day, you'll have helped prep part of 108 separate dishes. No repeats, no mistakes, and the emperor won't even know your name. Each dish represents something: a dynasty, a region, a lucky number, a memory from the emperor's youth, or a combination of animal parts that make your ancestors weep. You don't always understand why, but you don't ask questions. Questions are for officials. You slice, you stir, you bow. As the sky lightens and the garden begins to hum with cicadas, the first wave of tasting begins. No imperial dish is served without a chain of trust. Junior taster, senior taster, eunuch, overseer, silver needle test. You watch as your carefully trimmed slivers of pickled cabbage are sniffed, poked, and finally nodded at by a man whose face hasn't changed expression since the last emperor. It's a little soul-crushing, but also oddly satisfying. By mid-morning, the kitchen is a ballet of chaos. Steam clouds everything. Someone trips carrying bird's nest soup and nearly loses their rank and eyebrows. You catch a glimpse of dish 43, crispy eel with pine nuts and a glistening glaze, and realize it's been assembled using tweezers. Not chopsticks. Tweezers. Nearby, another cook whispers the time aloud. You glance up, only 4 hours until the first dish is carried out. You've never seen the emperor eat. You only know he sits behind a screen, and if he likes something, the dish returns empty. If he doesn't, you don't see that cook again for a few days, sometimes longer. Historians still argue whether the emperor ever actually ate all 108 dishes or simply inspected them like edible art. You suspect it's a little of both. After all, this isn't food. It's theater. It's diplomacy. It's one long, slow flex in porcelain bowls. By early afternoon, your hands are sore. You've trimmed 10,000 scallion curls, and someone just asked you to redo a lotus root pattern because it was too symmetrical. You nod. You redo. You whisper apologies to the vegetable gods, And then the call, Tray 1. A hush falls. The dishes begin their slow journey to the Imperial Hall, carried by a procession of trembling hands and perfectly ironed sleeves. You watch your little segment disappear into the golden corridors and you feel something. Pride, panic, hunger. Definitely hunger. You sneak a bite of leftover duck tongue. It's chewy, kind of poetic. And you wonder if no one eats your dish. Does it still count? Then someone shouts about the radish roses again, and you're back to work. You wake again. Not from sleep. There hasn't been time for that, but from a kind of culinary trance. You've been chopping, stirring, arranging, adjusting for so long that your arms move on their own. Your eyes sting from steam. Your apron is now indistinguishable from a dishcloth. Welcome to your daily rebirth in the palace kitchen. The Imperial kitchen isn't one building. It's a compound, a self-contained universe of sizzling oil, clanging woks, and people who've memorized the emperor's dietary taboos better than their own birthdays. You pass 20 steaming vats before breakfast, each manned by someone with a job so specific, it makes a crossword puzzle feel underachieving. To your left, the rice harmony unit debates the merits of jasmine versus glutinous. To your right, someone is delicately flipping 100 quail eggs with chopsticks like they're counting blessings. You keep your head down. You're in the meat team today, which means you'll spend the morning elbow deep in duck, pork, chicken, goose, and possibly something that once flew, but now just wiggles suspiciously. No one prepares food here, they compose it. The menu changes daily, but always includes exactly 108 dishes. Why 108? Historians still argue whether it represents the number of stars in traditional Chinese cosmology, the Buddhist sacred number of desires to overcome, or simply the maximum number of bowls the emperor's table could physically support. You personally suspect it's the result of a board official showing off. What's important is that each dish is distinct, not just by flavor but by intention. A dish of snow fungus isn't there to be eaten, it's there to cool the liver. The pickled carp, not for hunger but for reflection. The candied lotus root with red dates, a reminder of filial piety with every sticky chew. You turn your attention to your current task, slicing pork belly so thin it flutters in the breeze like satin. This is for dish 12, a Cantonese-style hot pot with fermented tofu, and an aroma that makes people rethink vegetarianism. Across from you, someone is sculpting carrots into tiny phoenixes. You make a mental note, phoenix equals carrot, dragon equals daikon. Toadstool equals? Probably not an actual toadstool, you hope. There's no shout in here. Not because everyone's calm far from it, but because shouting implies improvisation. And there's no room for that in a kitchen where a single dumpling crease can make the difference between reward and reassignment to the night tofu shift. By mid-morning, the chef de cuisine appears. He glides more than walks robes perfectly clean, despite the whirlwind of activity. He doesn't speak. He inspects. He lifts a lid, tastes a broth, raises one eyebrow. Someone nearby drops a spoon out of fear and it clatters like a warning gong. You keep slicing. Today you're responsible for dishes 21 through 24. That includes fragrant duck with osmanthus blossoms, simmered beef tendon with star anise abalone, and bamboo in superior broth and egg custard that looks like the moon. Not literally, of course. That would be absurd. You hear a whisper from the dessert prep station someone tried to add fresh lychee to a winter dish. Scandalous. It's not lychee season. That's practically a culinary crime. A lesson in Imperial kitchen's ingredients have timing. just like revolutions or dumplings. The trays begin to assemble. Each dish is placed on a precisely lacquered stand, always with its corresponding chopstick spoon and, when appropriate, handwritten poem. Yes, a poem. For certain dishes, the emperor expects a short verse explaining the dish's symbolism, texture, or emotional trajectory. You once wrote, "This dish dances like leaves in first frost." It was about celery. You're still proud. You feel a tap on your shoulder. It's the tofu sculptor. He silently hands you a plate. On it, a miniature garden made entirely of edible components. Pea tendrils for vines, pickled radish for flower petals, a tiny bridge somehow carved from taro. You blink. This is for the emperor. He nods. Dish 58 symbolizes peace after rain. You nod slowly. What if he doesn't eat it? The sculptor shrugs. Then we hope he notices it before it wilts. There's something strangely comforting about this. The idea that food is art even if it only exists for a few minutes under the emperor's gaze. A brief moment of meaning, then gone. By late morning, your legs ache. You haven't sat since the rooster yawned, but you keep working. The bamboo steamer hisses, the broth bubbles. Your hands remember what your brain forgets. You finish the pork belly, perfect slices stacked like paper. Someone whisks it away, vanishing into the maze of trays and couriers. You won't see it again. You won't know if the emperor eats it. You won't know if he liked it. But you do know that it fluttered like satin. And that's enough. You blink twice and realize your shift is still nowhere near over. You're now surrounded by an assembly line of dishes that could easily pass for a jewelry exhibit, if only sapphires smelled like duck fat and ginger glaze. The emperor hasn't even sat down yet, but his lunch already looks like a gallery opening with better lighting and way more tofu. Here it comes, the 8 flavors doctrine. It's not an official edict, mind you, but everyone in the kitchen lives by it as if it were carved into stone. The 8 classic Chinese flavor categories: sweet sour, salty bitter pungent, spicy cooling, and umami errant, just guidelines. They're mandatory symphony sections, and your emperor is the only audience. Everything that hits that jade and gold lacquered table must sing in balance. That means dish 7 might be crisp pork belly with the sweet malt glaze, followed by dish 8 pickled mustard root, sour enough to make your ancestors pucker. The emperor's palate must travel across flavors like a dragon, weaving through clouds, elegant, unstoppable, slightly terrifying. You, unfortunately, are in charge of a cooling dish today, which basically means food that can soothe the body's heat, at least according to traditional Chinese medicine. It involves mung beans, snow fungus, lotus seeds, and the unwavering belief that this combination won't put the emperor to sleep mid-bite. You stir slowly as though calmness itself might seep into the soup. Nearby, someone adjusts a bowl of hot and spicy ox tripe. The aroma alone could cure congestion. Another cook stands with her hands deep in a giant basin of soy-marinated quail eggs, counting them aloud. She loses count, starts over, again. It's been an hour. The 8 flavors system isn't just culinary, it's philosophical. It reflects the emperor's ideal rule, balanced, harmonious, full of nuance, and never boring. Historians still argue whether this system originated from a single dynasty or emerged slowly over generations like vinegar fermenting in a forgotten jar. Either way, today's meal must follow it, or someone will receive a strongly worded scroll. The kicker. Most of the dishes are eaten in just one bite. You've prepared half a dozen intricately designed dumplings, each flavored with a different region's spice profile. Sichuan chili oil here, Shaanxi vinegar there. Inside one duck and aged tangerine peel. Inside another crab with chrysanthemum petals. You've tied them with chive strands like edible gifts. They're gorgeous. They're delicate. They will disappear in 3 seconds. Max. Still, the philosophy holds. If the emperor tastes each flavor, even for a moment, his body and spirit will remain aligned with the heavens. At least until the next meal. Or until someone oversalts the sea cucumber again. You glance up at the wooden panel listing your sections. Flavor goals for the day. Sweet peach and sesame glaze. Dish 19. Sour pickled hawthorn dish 34. Salty dried scallop soup. Dish 41. Bitter stir-fried chrysanthemum leaves. Dish 46. Pungent raw garlic slivers. Dish 55. Spicy chili oil eel. Dish 68. Cooling lotus root soup yours. Dish 72. Umami mushroom stuffed tofu pouches. Dish 81. Balance. A plate for every emotion, a bowl for every mood swing. You sneak a taste of your lotus root dish. It's crisp. The broth is subtle, maybe too subtle. You hesitate. Add a sliver of candied tangerine peel. It lifts the flavor just enough to remind the tongue that something is happening. A junior cook leans over. That smells gentle. You smirk. It's the quietest scream in the kitchen. Meanwhile, the broth station erupts into panic. Someone used the wrong aged ham in the double-boiled chicken stock. Not Jinhua ham, the other ham. The one that tastes fine, but lacks the poetic backstory. 2 cooks freeze. A third runs for the scrolls. You stir your cooling soup with renewed focus. Not today, chaos. Not in dish 72. You think about the flavors you grew up with. The heavy dark soy of your uncle's kitchen. The light ginger scallion dipping sauce from festival noodles. The soup your grandmother made with dried longan that healed everything except heartache. This emperor probably never tasted that. But maybe your cooling soup carries a ghost of it. Maybe the chive-wrapped dumpling reminds him of something he doesn't have words for. Or maybe hell just chew once and forget it ever existed. Either way, you finish your dish, place it on its jade stand, and wipe the rim with the cloth soaked in rose water. One flavor, one moment, one perfect spoonful. You step back. It's ready. The ginger master sneezes, which is not ideal when your job is to cut paper-thin slices without your hand twitching. You look up just in time to see him regain composure and go right back to it, clean blade, clean board, no fuss. He's been doing this for 20 years. Probably dreams in julienne. You're still on your 3rd year of kitchen service, which means you've graduated from squid gut detail, but not yet earned the honor of touching anything that quivers, gleams, or is considered imperial favorite. You envy the tofu sculptors with their silent precision and oddly artistic tension. You envy the fishbone pickers even. At least they're trusted with tweezers. Your own role today, meat slicing for braised venison in dish 49 and prep assistance for dish 13 grilled sparrow skewers with plum sauce and melon pearls. You don't ask why sparrow, you just pluck skewer and try not to get philosophical. Because here in the palace kitchen, specialization is everything. There's a man whose sole job is to crack quail eggs without breaking the yolks. He does it with a thumbnail and a twirl. Next to him is the vinegar ladle technician. Yes, ladle, he doesn't pour. He portions precisely with one handmade ceramic spoon. You once watched him reject a sauce for being 2 drops too acidic. 2 drops. It's said that some cooks train for 5 years just to be allowed near the duck oven. The roasted duck that comes out of that stone-lined furnace is not just food, it's lacquered legend. The skin snaps, the fat glistens, and it's served at exactly body temperature. You've never tasted it, of course. Not even a crumb. One duck, one emperor, one chance. Your supervisor once told you that to be a true Imperial cook, you must disappear into your role. At the time, you thought he was being poetic. Now you realize he meant it literally. You become your task. If you're slicing ginger, you are the ginger. If you're steaming buns, you think like yeast. If you're steaming sparrows, well, let's just say empathy isn't always helpful. Lunch prep reaches its crescendo by midday. The kitchen swells with heat noise and the smell of 5 provinces. Sweet bean paste, fermented tofu, sizzling scallions. You glance across the courtyard where the starch team is forming radish cakes by hand, stamping each with a red chrysanthemum seal. They look perfect. You walk past the rice station. The white rice line is not just a station, it's a division. A battalion of young men tending to grains with the solemnity of monks. They rinse and rinse until the water runs clear. Then rinse again. They steam by smell, not sight. If you open a lid too early, it's a sin. Too late, and it's sacrilege. Historians still argue whether this level of specialization was genius or tyranny. After all, when one man spent his entire life frying. Lotus roots, is that excellence or exile? You're not sure, but you do know that the fried lotus root man wears a look of permanent serenity. Or possibly just surrender. You return to your station now, occupied by a series of tiny porcelain bowls waiting for garnishes. Dishes 50 through 60 are being plated in sequence. Each dish is accompanied by its matching color palette: green onion with fish yellow chrysanthemum, with tofu red pepper with duck. The Imperial aesthetic demands not just flavor balance, but harmony of hues. The Emperor's table must resemble a garden in bloom, a very expensive, very edible garden. The head eunuch makes a quiet round. He pauses at a tray of shrimp dumplings, squints, and moves on without speaking. You exhale. That means it's passable. If it had been truly perfect, he'd have nodded. If it had been terrible, well, there are worse things than silence. You slip into the sugar room, which sounds pleasant but is actually terrifying. This is where candied fruits, jellies, and transparent syrup sheets are made by people who wear heat-resistant gloves like armor. Someone is pouring molten sugar over a carved walnut shell, creating what looks like a tiny crystal boat. For dish 89, and there at the center of the room, a woman carefully wraps rose petals in sweetened glutinous rice and folds the result into a lotus shape. You stare, she notices. Keep walking, she says gently. You do. Your feet ache. Your back protests. You wonder if any of this food will be remembered, if any of it matters. You remember what the soup master once told you. No one remembers the 4th dish in a banquet, but if it's wrong, everyone does. You return to your station and finish garnishing the venison. A final brush of soy glaze, a curl of scallion, a breath of star anise smoke trapped in the lid with a charcoal chip. It's beautiful. No one will know it was you. And still, it feels like something close to art. You wipe your hands, glance at the sun. Lunch is almost ready. Only 58 dishes to go. You smell like smoke vinegar and duck fat. You're not mad about it. It's kind of the unofficial cologne of Imperial kitchen life. If you don't smell like a braised protein by mid-afternoon, someone's going to ask if you're feeling unwell. You're rotating stations today just briefly to assist with steaming buns. It's hot. Steaming hot. Literally. The bamboo baskets are stacked, taller than you, puffing mist into the air like miniature volcanoes. You step into the steam and immediately lose your peripheral vision. A senior cook hands you a spoon and points to a vat of sesame lotus filling. You nod and begin portioning. Each spoonful must be identical, perfectly placed into dough that's been pinched shut like a secret. You work quickly. The dough is sensitive. The steam waits for no one. It's easy to forget standing in this mushroom cloud of fragrant heat that you're in the heart of the world's most refined culinary institution. It feels more like a sauna hosted by highly organized lunatics. One drop of filling too much and the bun splits. Too little and it collapses like a failed philosophy. The bun master eyes your work. Doesn't speak. Just grunts in syllables. This is his approval language. You get a half grunt. Solid B+. You'll take it. As the baskets fill, you switch to fire tending duties. It's a rare honor, but also kind of miserable. The wood has to be exact. No driftwood, no young twigs. Pine burns too fast. Camphor taints the aroma. You feed the fire with carefully dried logs that have been aged, stacked, and rotated like royal wine. You can feel the sweat pooling at the base of your neck. You're not alone. Every cook here glistens like lacquered duck. Some even boast about it. If you're not sweating, one says while flipping eel slices, you're not cooking. You're just warming things. The Imperial kitchen is loud but precise. There's shouting sure, but it's directional. Intentional. A controlled storm. Someone calls out the next sequence of dishes. You recognize a few of your own. Dish 49, dish 72, dish 81. Off they go, carried on lacquered trays by young men in embroidered robes. You never see where they end up. You just hope the emperor's mood improves slightly, if only for one bite. Now you're back at your main station, slicing pickled daikon for garnish. You're aiming for whisper thin. One of your teammates holds each slice up to the light like a gem. He nods. You keep going. Then comes the arrival of the next challenge, dish 93. Steamed duck tongue arranged in a circle surrounded by chrysanthemum petals. It's a dish that makes most people squint when they hear it. The emperor apparently finds it texturally delightful. Duck tongues are complicated, slippery, bizarrely shaped. You handle them with the care of someone folding silk origami underwater. One wrong movement and the whole plate looks like a crime scene. And yet when you plate them centered curled, kissed with soy glaze and garnished with orange peel zest, they look elegant. Strange, but elegant. You glance around the kitchen. The smell of caramelizing sugar mingles with grilled garlic and star anise. There's no one dish dominating the air. It's a chorus. A harmony of scents that could probably be bottled and sold under the name dynastic pressure. Historians still argue whether the imperial kitchen staff ever tasted what they made. Some records suggest leftovers were strictly managed, passed down in rank. Others hint at quiet sampling behind screens and under bowls. You've never tasted a duck tongue, but you're hoping today if you finish fast enough, there might be a spare. The bun master walks by again. He stops, sniffs, points at you. You smell like steam and judgment, he says deadpan. Good work. You smile. That's the highest praise available around here. Then disaster strikes. Someone drops a tray. Dish 66, ginseng and lily root porridge. Shatters on impact. The kitchen goes still. Even the steam seems to pause. You look away. No one speaks. The head taster walks over silently. The broken porcelain is swept. The floor cleaned. The porridge remade. No yelling. Just correction. Consequences are quiet here. You finish your duck tongues, they're approved. Barely. One tongue is slightly off angle, but it's too late now. You bow to the tray, not out of worship, but out of respect for what it cost. Someone taps you on the shoulder. Dessert team needs a hand with dish 99 candied kumquats and rock sugar syrup. You nod, march off, kumquat bound. It's a sweet ending to a long afternoon. You stir the syrup, trying not to inhale too deeply. Sugar steam is somehow both delightful and horrifying. You coat the fruits, cool them, polish them gently with oiled fingers. The kitchen bell rings twice. Final course ready. You pass the last tray off and step back. Your part of the meal is over. You haven't sat down once. You haven't tasted anything. But you've participated in a meal that took 12 hours to prepare, will last 30 minutes, and be spoken of in exactly one sentence by the emperor, if you're lucky. And still somehow, it was worth it. You're peeling lotus seeds now. Not because you were assigned to, but because you wandered too close to the dessert team and made eye contact. That was your mistake. Lotus seed peeling isn't fast. It isn't glamorous. It's the kind of meditative labor that makes you question your place in the cosmos or, at least in the Imperial kitchen hierarchy. You pick one up. Use the blunt end of a fishbone tweezer. Pop. Out comes the bitter green germ. One down, a few hundred to go. The rest of the kitchen hums with post-lunch tension. You think after the 108-dish marathon things would wind down. They don't. The next meal begins before the first dish is even digested. The emperor snacks. Constantly. He grazes between scrolls, between meetings, between awkward silences with officials. And you prepare like each snack is the most important one he'll never finish. This afternoon's menu includes jellyfish salad with vinegar foam, golden threaded egg rolls, and a mung bean custard that must be molded to look like a dragon's scale, just one. If it looks like a snake scale, you'll be asked to meditate on your choices. You pass the fermentation chamber and catch a whiff of something sour and purposeful. Pickles. Not the kind you scarf down next to noodles. These are royal. There's an entire division in the Imperial kitchen just for preserved vegetables. You once met a man whose entire job was to manage radish aging timelines. He spoke in months. This one's not ready. It needs 32 more days. There's a jar labeled cucumber vintage last autumn. You don't dare touch it. The pickle team is quiet. Reverent? They move slowly like monks in vinegar-scented robes. One of them holds a jar like a baby bird and pours a single spoon of cloudy brine into a small bowl. Dish 67, he whispers. Needs to taste like absence. You blink, nod. Back away. Elsewhere, the broth station resets. Bones clatter. Steam rises again. These are not simple stocks. These are tonics. Nourishing essences brewed from oxtail dried scallop ginseng root, black chicken, and hope. They're simmered for hours, reduced into strength, and strained through cloth finer than an official's excuses. You once helped prepare a tea made from deer antler licorice root and wolfberry. It smelled like a forest funeral and tasted like moral obligation. But the emperor drank it. Twice. A runner brushes past you. Dish 78 needs chrysanthemum infusion. Clear. No petals. You nod. You know where the petals are. In the sieve. Waiting. Your lotus seed peeling continues. You develop a rhythm. Squeeze, twist, flick, repeat. The bitterness inside the seed is said to ruin the sweetness of dessert. A single missed germ and someone might call your dish imbalanced. In this kitchen, imbalanced is the culinary version of a raised eyebrow from the emperor. You'd rather be exiled. You think about all the unseen hands behind every plate. The scribe who writes down the names, the servant who polishes each spoon with rice water, the herbalist who adjusts the yin-yang balance of each menu based on the emperor's last sneeze. Everyone contributes, no one tastes. Historians still argue whether these behind-the-scenes cooks had creative freedom or were simply executing plans from above. Some scrolls suggest kitchen masters proposed seasonal menus. Others imply every item had to be approved by palace astrologers. You once heard that a fish dish was rejected because Mercury was in the wrong quadrant. You believe it. By mid-afternoon, the kitchen air has shifted. The frantic energy of lunch prep gives way to a kind of focused calm. It's snack hour, not for you, for the emperor. A trio of trays is assembled, one sweet, one savory, one medicinal. You contribute a small lotus pudding shaped like a plum blossom. It's pink, lightly sweet, and quivers like it has stage fright. You watch it leave the room carried by trembling hands. There's no guarantee it'll be eaten. Sometimes dishes are simply viewed. That's right, admired for presentation, then removed untouched. The aesthetic carries its own kind of nourishment, or so the philosophers say. The dessert cook leans over and murmurs, "You know he once asked for a whole meal of just colors." You blink. "Colors." She nods. Nothing white, nothing brown. Just green, yellow, red, and blue. You pause. Did he eat it? She shrugs. He stared at it for a long time, then asked for tea. You finish your lotus seed tray and stretch your back. Someone offers you a half-cooked yam. You inhale it like it's roast duck. You've earned it. Evening begins to creep in, but the kitchen doesn't rest. There's a banquet tomorrow, a seasonal shift, something symbolic involving turtles and fresh bamboo shoots. You pretend not to hear the announcement. You step outside briefly. The courtyard smells like wood-smoke jasmine and duty. A few stray petals float in the water basin. Your hands are stained with starch, your sleeves with sesame oil. You feel like a recipe walked out of a scroll. And still there's more to do. Because the emperor doesn't nap. He samples. You're squinting at tofu again. Not because you don't know what it is, you've handled more tofu than most people have socks, but because this block in front of you needs to be carved into lotus petals. Delicate, even, symbolic, edible. It's the Imperial kitchen's version of origami, and your knife is trembling slightly with anticipation. Or fear. Dish 84, tofu blossom and chrysanthemum broth. Not meant to fill the stomach, but to soothe the soul or dazzle the eye, or make the emperor feel vaguely poetic for 3 seconds before moving on to a pickled eel slice. The knife work is everything. You slice gently, folding thin sheets of bean curd over each other, petal by petal, until it looks like something that might bloom under moonlight. It's slippery work. One wrong cut and the petal rips. Or worse, the entire tofu block splits in rebellion, leaving you with what looks like a culinary crime scene. A junior cook nearby whispers, "Did you hear someone drop the bird's nest soup?" You wince. That's not just a mistake. That's an incident. Bird's nest is expensive, rare, and believed to strengthen the lungs, though you suspect what it really strengthens is fear of your supervisor. You focus harder. The tofu must be flawless. Smooth, gentle, a whisper in food form. You finish the carving. Place it in the shallow bowl. Pour over the warm, clear chrysanthemum broth. Petals float like regrets. It's beautiful, subtle. Likely to be forgotten in a sea of 107 other dishes, but you know it's there, and that's enough. You pass it along to plating. Tofu, you think, is not just food here. It's symbolism. blandness refined to elegance, softness made disciplined. Historians still argue whether these carved dishes were ever eaten or simply admired like jade sculptures. Some records suggest the emperor would glance and nod. That was enough to earn the dish a place in the scrolls. Or to justify 3 hours of carving, you step back into the main kitchen and catch a glimpse of a different kind of dish entirely, something bright, glossy fried. Dish 87, gold-wrapped prawns with chili essence. The cook behind it winks, no symbolism, just crunch. You envy that freedom, but you go back to your knife now preparing radish peels into phoenix feathers. These aren't garnishes, they're expectations. Every element on the plate has a purpose, even if the purpose is to imply that you understand restraint. A tray of finished dishes is paraded past. You recognize a few of yours. The duck tongues, the lotus pudding, the tofu flour. They disappear into lacquered halls beyond the curtain. The emperor is eating now, or viewing, or musing. You'll never know. You turn to dish 88. Crystal melon soup. It requires winter melon carved into translucent cubes and boiled in rice wine and rock sugar until it tastes like memory. You peel, carve, stir. Time stretches. A young assistant next to you mutters, "Why so many flour dishes lately?" You shrug. Maybe the emperor's feeling philosophical. He snorts. Or maybe he's bored and nobody's brave enough to feed him a pepper. You both chuckle. Carefully. Quietly. The chef de cuisine walks past. He pauses by your melon cubes. He lifts one with chopsticks, examines it against the light, says nothing, moves on. Your breath returns. The dish is approved. Later, as the trays vanish one by one, you spot a bowl return from the emperor's chamber. Empty. It's your tofu flour. Someone nearby raises an eyebrow. He finished it. You nod. Just once. Then go back to carving the next block. You wonder what the emperor thought, if anything, while chewing on petals made of bean curd. Did he feel calm? Powerful, slightly annoyed. You'll never know, but you'll remember the slice, the shape, the steam rising from that perfect bowl. And maybe that's what matters. You're staring at a clock that doesn't exist. Time in the Imperial kitchen isn't measured in minutes or hours. It's measured in dishes. You're currently between dish 91 and dish 92, which means technically it's late afternoon. But honestly, it feels like Thursday of next week. Waiting is the flavor no one talks about. The palace kitchen is a place of movement, sure, but also of stillness, of boiling without stirring, marinating, without poking, simmering, without second guessing. You've spent the last 20 minutes staring at a pot of turtle soup, willing it to reduce by another half-inch while quietly arguing with yourself about whether the fire is too high or you're just impatient. Spoiler, it's both. Dish 92 is one of those tricky wait-for-it items: braised oxtail and fermented bean paste, aged precisely long enough to taste intentional, and not like you forgot it behind the rice barrels. It's still bubbling. Slowly. The smell is deep, almost philosophical. Like a history lesson taught with marrow, you check the fire again, perfectly steady. You've built a small wall of bricks to hold the heat, just so angled the pot 3 degrees counterclockwise, and placed 2 leaves under the lid for extra aroma control. You're either a genius or completely sleep-deprived. Someone passes with a tray of cold dishes, chilled sea cucumber with wasabi flowers and winter bamboo shoots carved into chess pieces. Timing matters, he says casually, balancing it all on one arm. Too early it wilts, too late it sweats. You nod. Because in this place, everything is about timing. The emperor doesn't just eat when he's hungry. He eats when the moment demands it. A full moon. Time for dumplings. A passing comet. Better serve long noodles for longevity. Someone important died. Clear soup with radish, no garnish. You're finally allowed to lift the lid. The oxtail has collapsed into itself. Tender. Rich. You skim the top, checking the sheen. It glows faintly like lacquered wood. You smile just a little. Dish 92 is ready. You serve it up with a ladle polished so clean you can see your own tired face reflected in it. You garnish it with thinly sliced scallion curls and a dot of aged vinegar on the rim. Not in the dishon the rim. It's the palace way. A hint of contrast that never touches the core. As the tray disappears, you find yourself pausing again. Waiting is just about cooking. It's the rhythm of this whole kitchen. You wait for a nod, for approval, for something to go wrong, which it will. For the next dish, the next turn, the next breath of recognition that may or may not ever arrive. Historians still argue whether the long preparation times of imperial dishes were about complexity or control. Was the waiting a necessity of flavor or a display of patience? As virtue, you suspect it's both. The emperor's table doesn't just display food, it performs discipline. You remember a time last year. Dish 17. Crab soup in lotus cup when a young cook opened the lid 3 minutes too soon. The aroma escaped, the texture changed. He was reassigned to cabbage folding for 6 months. He became very philosophical about cabbage. Back at your station, someone is stirring sweet rice with rose jam for dish 95. It needs to sit for 4 hours before plating. Why 4, you ask? Because 3 isn't enough and 5 is too late, they reply. Then they walk away as if that solved everything. You clean your station. Slowly, methodically. Not just to be neat, but to pass the time until your next assignment. A runner comes by. Snack tray for the 5th wife. Something light. You nod and open the notes mung bean jelly with osmanthus syrup. Dish SN04. Not part of the 108, but still important. You prepare it quietly. Let the jelly cool at room temperature. Pour the syrup like a lullaby. Plate it on a porcelain dish shaped like a cloud. Then you wait. Someone passes with a joke. The emperor waits for nothing, but his food waits for him. You laugh. And keep waiting. Because sometimes the secret ingredient really is time. You hear it before you see it, the rhythmic clang of bronze bells. Not alarms, not danger. Just the signal that entertainment has begun. In the imperial palace, food isn't the only performance. As the emperor prepares for his evening meal, the musicians tune their flutes. The dancers stretch their silk sleeves, and the kitchen prepares to make every bite theatrical. Tonight's meal will be served with song and shadow puppets, and a 6-course tasting menu that includes a dish literally titled Phoenix Ascends with Ginger. No pressure. You're not cooking the phoenix, by the way. That's dish 96. You're on the garnish team for dish 97, crispy lotus root with 5 fragrances. The trick is slicing the lotus root into even rounds, brushing each one with a different glaze and arranging them in a blooming spiral. The glaze colors amber green. Deep red plum and golden must align with the traditional 5 elements. If your red looks too orange, it throws off the harmony. If your green is too minty, someone might write a poem about your failure. There is no applause in the imperial kitchen, only silence or scolding. Still, there's a strange kind of music to this work. Around you, cleavers hit boards in syncopated rhythm. Soup ladles swirl with a choreography only the broth understands. Dishes move in and out like dancers across the stage of steaming tables. You imagine the emperor lifting a spoon, nodding slightly, then returning to his flute duet with a minor noble. Probably off key. Meanwhile, you move to prep dish 98 dancing shrimp with fire oil. It's a spicy dish rare for this palace, and its appearance signals that the emperor is in a bold mood or just tired of delicate flavors. The shrimp must be flash fried so they curl upright as if mid-leap, then drizzled with chili oil heated over orange peels. It smells like warning and celebration at once. The presentation matters. The shrimp are placed upright in a shallow bowl of jade green broth. On top, a wisp of fried ginger curled like a dragon's whisker. It's less a meal and more a statement. You plate it carefully, aware that this dish will be brought out during the loudest drum roll of the performance. It's not just dinner, it's theater. A junior runner brushes past you. The emperor laughed at the dancing bear, he says, breathless, then asked for something with bite. You point at the shrimp tray, on its way. Moments like these blur the line between food and spectacle. You think of how dishes are timed to music, how the lights in the dining hall shift color to match the 5 fragrances menu, how one time a sorbet course melted too soon and ruined the symbolism of a frozen moon. The dessert chef still flinches when he hears the word lychee. Historians still argue whether the emperor truly tasted every dish or merely experienced them like art. Some believe he sampled a few, then signaled satisfaction or discontent with subtle quizza, lifted eyebrow, a half-swallowed sigh, or a sudden request for poetry. You once heard that an entire dish was deemed too noisy because the crispy rice layer cracked too sharply during chewing. And yet you cook on. Dish 99 now. Candied chestnuts and chrysanthemum honey. You glaze them like jewels, place them one by one in a carved gourd bowl. Dish 100. A palate cleanser cucumber blossom soaked in snowmelt. Someone actually traveled to the mountains last winter to collect it. It's been frozen in clay jars until today. For one bite, there's no end to it, no pause, just the gentle procession of flavor's symbolism seasons. The emperor's court is a world where carrots resemble crane feathers and soup must whisper when stirred. And through it all, you wait backstage, the silent crew of this edible opera. Sometimes you and the other cooks joke about what you'd serve if given total freedom. Fried dumplings with extra garlic, sticky rice with mango and no symbolism. Maybe a bowl of noodles plain and hot and messy, revolutionary. Instead, you finish dish 101, white fungus and goji berries, served in a clear lotus bowl meant to represent clarity of mind. You're not sure if it works, but it looks like something a sage would sip before delivering wisdom. The bell rings again. The shrimp are served. The emperor clapsants. You exhale. Back to the next dish. You're elbow deep in vinegar foam when someone mutters behind you. How many dishes is it again? You don't look up. 108, you reply automatically. Your fingers coaxing tiny bubbles into shape over a nest of seaweed and quail egg. Same as always. But the number isn't just a number. It's lore, it's architecture. It's the ceiling you build every meal toward and the weight that sits quietly on everyone's shoulders. 108 dishes, each with its own story region meaning mood. Some say it's based on Buddhist symbolism, 108 worldly desires. Others argue it's linked to Taoist cosmology, or simply a numerical quirk made holy by repetition. Historians still argue whether the number was spiritual imperial propaganda or a lucky accident that stuck like rice to a hot wok. Whatever the truth, you've never seen a menu shorter than 108 dishes. You glance around. Dish 102, braised goose with aged citrus. Dish 103, crab claw suspended in aspic. Dish 104, bamboo shoots carved to look like lanterns. It's late. The dishes are getting weirder, but no less beautiful. You're on the finishing team now, those who take the late stage dishes and make them gleam. It's like polishing the final act of a long play. Every bite matters, but these final ones, they linger. They close the show. Dish 105 arrives tofu cloud with fermented plum, a soft, tangy palate softener before the ceremonial broth. You dust the top with powdered osmanthus like snow. You think about the emperor miles away in the hall, possibly swirling the tofu with a jade spoon, possibly thinking about war or concubines or just whether this tastes different than the last time. You hope he notices the osmanthus. A runner arrives with a folded slip. Change in dish 106, he says. Empress wants lotus jelly instead of almond. You nod. No questions. Almonds are out. Lotus in. You pivot. Reheat the lotus jelly. Plate it in a chilled bowl shaped like a turtle shell. Don't ask why. Ask why not. Dish 107 is a golden fritter shaped like a fish. A nod to prosperity. It crackles when it's done, and you glaze it with a syrup that smells like memory's brown sugar rice wine and orange zest. You set it on a thin porcelain dish painted with koi. Then finally comes dish 108, the last dish, the finale. The quiet curtain close. It's almost always a broth. Tonight, jade clarity soup. Double-boiled chicken stock with chrysanthemum petals, slices of abalone and one snow mushroom floating like a moon. You ladle it into a bowl so clear it reflects the ceiling lanterns. You garnish with a ginkgo leaf. Place the lid gently. Breathe. The final tray is assembled. All 108 dishes arranged in waves-cold hot dry soup, sweet sour ceremonial. A table that represents seasons, dynasties, emotions, and philosophy. It's not food, it's an edible empire. You watch as the trays vanish down the hallway. You don't follow, you never do. That's the last step, the one that's not yours. Instead, you sit for a moment on a wooden stool next to a stack of used ladles. Your legs ache. Your fingers are pruned from hours of washing, slicing, simmering. But in your mind, you can trace every dish. You didn't make all of them, but you helped. And that means something. Someone nearby jokes, "What if next year it's 109?" No one laughs. You head to the basin and wash your hands slowly. The vinegar scent lingers. So does the pride. You're polishing a carrot. No, really. Not peeling, not chopping polishing. The emperor noticed yesterday's carrot garnish looked dull. The head chef's face didn't move for 6 full seconds before ordering that all carrot coins be rubbed with sesame oil and buffed until they could reflect a candle flame. This is your life now. The carrot in your hand squeaks slightly as your cloth moves across it. You hold it up. Not quite mirror-like. You keep rubbing. Around you, the kitchen is quieter than usual. The main meal has been served. The aftermath has settled like ash after a fireworks show. Some dishes came back empty. Some came back untouched. One came back with a spoon missing, which has caused a minor panic because no one knows where the emperor's spoon went. You're not on the spoon committee, thankfully. You're on post-meal detail organizing, wiping, preserving, and preparing, just in case the emperor decides he's still hungry, or bored, or wants to compare 2 versions of lotus root sliced differently. This has happened. You watch the chef de cuisine float past silent as always, arms tucked behind his back, inspecting the trays as if they might confess to a culinary crime. He pauses next to the pickling jars, nods, moves on. Someone exhales. It wasn't you, but you feel it anyway. Dish 37 returned with a note. too strong, reduce the plum. The cook who made it is now peeling beans in silence as penance or meditation. Maybe both. This kitchen remembers everything. Not out loud, but in small corrections. Glances changes in how the broth is stirred the next day. And at the center of it all, the emperor's gaze. He doesn't come here, of course. His attention trickles down in notes and spoons in what gets eaten and what gets dismissed. A full bowl returning is worse than a slap. An empty bowl, that's music. You once overheard a taster say the emperor eats with his eyes first, his mouth second, his mood third. That about sums it up. Dish 59 was returned yesterday. Too blue, the note read. Try a warmer tone. The fish had been garnished with butterfly pea flowers. The blue came from the petals. Naturally. But somehow the blue offended the day, or the emperor's sleeve, or a passing dream. Now no blue flowers. The order went out this morning, and so begins the quiet choreography of compliance, like dancers changing their rhythm mid-performance. Except the stage is steam and your costume is a rice flower-stained apron, historians still argue whether the emperor had personal preferences, or whether his tastes were filtered through a chorus of concubines, eunuchs, astrologers, and a rotating cast of loyal tea readers. You suspect even he wasn't always sure, but one thing is certain, the food you serve is a mirror. Not of appetite, but of power. That's why you're polishing carrots. A runner slips into the kitchen. The Empress has requested ginger candy, thin-sliced, transparent. You look up, guess who's on the ginger team today? You walk to your station. The ginger is already peeled. Your knife is ready. You begin slicing paper thin. Each slice must be translucent enough to see light through, but thick enough to hold its shape when boiled in syrup. You make 40 slices, then boil them once, twice. Simmer them in rock sugar and dried rose petals. Lay them out to dry on a lacquered board arranged like dragon scales. You dust them with powdered osmanthus. You hope it's not too much, or too little. You wrap them in parchment. Send them off. You won't hear anything back. You almost never do. But later that evening, a note is quietly posted near the sweet station. Her Majesty smiled. You read it 3 times, then returned to your carrots. You're halfway through shaping a radish into a chrysanthemum when someone rushes past and whispers, "The Empress Dowager requested a broth, but not that broth." You pause mid-slice. Not that broth? What does that even mean? It doesn't matter. You'll figure it out. You always do. You wrap the unfinished radish flour in a damp cloth and pivot toward the herb station, where the air is thick with dried licorice goji berries, angelica root, and things that smell vaguely like ancient wisdom and mild regret. Someone's already prepping 3 different base stocks. Yon chicken, 1 pork, and 1 medicinal, which is code for strong enough to make your tongue question its life choices. You're asked to assist with a version of dish 83 double-boiled pear broth with snow fungus, but this time it needs to be slightly sweeter but not frivolous and with the resonance of late autumn. These are not metaphors. This is an actual instruction. This is your daily reality. You select the pears, not too ripe, thin-skinned. You peel them into ribbons, slice them into quarter moons, and gently poach them in spring water flavored with rock sugar and a single red date. The snow fungus floats like a ghost. You add 1 dried apricot, then remove it. Then add half. You whisper an apology to it. It's fine. It understands. Because here's the secret Imperial cuisine is politics in a bowl. No one knows this better than the Empress Dowager. She doesn't run the empire technically, but she tastes everything. And what she likes often becomes law, at least in the kitchen. A dish she praises is served weekly. A dish she frowns at disappears forever. Even mentioning it afterward becomes a kind of superstition. You remember when she declared that pickled plum too mournful. It was never seen again. You adjust the broth, add a curl of dried orange peel, and cover it with a porcelain lid shaped like a lotus bud. The tray is carried out in silence. You return to your radish flour. The Empress Dowager's influence has quietly reshaped the palace menu for years. She prefers softness over spice, symbolism over spectacle. She once had an entire meal themed around things that float and another based on the 5 types of silence. No one knew there were 5. Now everyone pretends they do. Historians still argue whether the Empress Dowager's tastes were genuinely refined or simply a product of unchecked power. But here's what you know: when she compliments a dish, the chef glows for a week. When she disapproves, you suddenly hear that chef has taken a sabbatical in the vinegar cellar. You complete the radish chrysanthemum. It's a beauty, crisp white blooming. You spritz it lightly with jasmine water and set it atop a bowl of chilled mung bean noodles. Symbolizes purity, resilience, and polite disapproval. Perfect for a royal audience. As you plate the dish, someone slides up beside you and says, "She's in a sea cucumber mood today." You nod. You've heard. Dishes 33, 56, and 79 are being adjusted accordingly. The sea cucumber masteries that Sajobis already at work, massaging the slippery creatures with ginger-infused brine and muttering something about texture being a form of diplomacy. You admire his focus. Then a note arrives: the Empress Dowager had requested her meal end with the memory of plum. That's it. No instructions, no ingredients. Just a memory. You're assigned to help interpret it. You and 2 other cooks stare at each other for 10 long seconds. Then someone says, "What about the salted plum jelly with rice vinegar pearls?" Someone else too loud. "What about a smoked plum broth with winter leaf dust?" You. "What if we steep plum blossoms in pear nectar, then serve it chilled over slivers of green bean cake?" They all pause. It's plausible. You run with it. Plum blossom, pear, bean cake, a whisper of sweet, a sigh of bitterness. You plate it in a small, shallow dish shaped like a falling leaf. You dust it with crushed magnolia petal. You call it Fleeting Season. The name is a risk, but the Empress Dowager appreciates subtle rebellion if it's plated correctly. Later, the dish returns. Empty, no note. But there's a second request: repeat tomorrow. You stare at the line. Your chest fills. Then you go back to your radishes. You're not sure how long you've been awake. The kitchen doesn't track days it tracks courses. You're somewhere between the night snacks and the dawn broth queue. A timeless in-between where your only compass is the sound of chopping and the smell of simmering duck bones. And then she enters. Not the emperor, not the Empress Dowager. Her. The concubine, with a name like wind chimes and a walk that sounds like silk brushing polished wood. The one whose opinions are not laws, but might as well be. Tonight she wants something light but thoughtful. You freeze mid-dumpling pinch. You glance over at your supervisor, who is already turning pale beneath his sesame oil sheen. She's requested a new dish. Not a repeat. Not something from the scrolls. Something imagined. This is how new dishes are born in the Imperial kitchen, not from freedom, but from careful improvisation under threat of eternal tofu duty. You're tasked with assisting. The lead cook decides on steamed egg custard, but with chrysanthemum petals, winter bamboo, and a center of crab roe. Soft, warm, hidden strength, he mumbles as if composing a riddle. You nod. You get it. You prep the crab roe, carefully mixing it with just a breath of Shaoxing wine and ginger. It must be vivid but not overpowering, present but polite, like a compliment you hope will be repeated in court. The petals are arranged in concentric circles. You steam it over a controlled flame. When the lid is finally removed, the custard jiggles, just slightly. The concubine's attendant takes it away on a tray the color of pearl. This could go many ways. You go back to dumpling work, half distracted. Then word spreads, she smiled. A single word, but it echoes through the room like a blessing. You don't stop. You can't stop. But inside you glow. Concubines don't hold formal power over the kitchen, but their moods influence the menu like tides pull at the sea. When she favors a dish, it appears more often. When she's ill, there's suddenly more soups. When she grieves, no sweetness is served that week. You remember last autumn when a favorite concubine fell ill. The emperor ordered a dish of pear cooked in longing. The kitchen served 10 variations before one finally received a silent nod. The court scribes noted it as dish 64B. It's now considered seasonal. Historians still argue whether these dishes reflected true feelings or were merely simple culinary diplomacy masquerading as nourishment. But you know better, because tonight you saw it happen. She smiled. You return to your dumpling fold-shaping golden purses of minced quail, black mushroom, and pickled plum. The flavor must be rich but balanced. The folds must be even 9 exactly. 9 is auspicious, 8 is unlucky, 10 is too eager. You place the dumplings on a bamboo tray and brush them with egg yolk, just enough to shine under lantern light. Meanwhile, another cook quietly removes 3 dishes from the planned evening menu. Too sour, he says. Might jar her mood. You nod. This is what cooking in the palace is. It's not about hunger, it's about harmony. The concubine's favorite colors are said to be jade and blush pink. You know this because the pickling team adjusted their radish tinting for a full month. No one asked them to. They just knew. You once watched a soup cook spend 4 hours perfecting a broth that would never be served, only sent as a scent wafted from behind a screen to stir memories of spring rain. It worked. She requested peach buns the next day. You finish the dumplings. Send them off. One tray among many. They won't return. They're not meant to. What matters is that they were made. Thoughtfully, delicately, in the quiet hope of a smile. As the night deepens, the kitchen softens. You roll your sleeves down, stretch your hands. Someone offers you a dried plum. You suck on it, slowly savoring the sour-sweet balance. It tastes like effort. And maybe, just maybe, a little victory. You're standing at the edge of the waste basin watching uneaten dishes return one by one. It's the quiet part of the evening, the part no one talks about. The food that didn't dazzle, didn't provoke, didn't sing in the emperor's mouth or whisper into the empress dowager's memories. It comes back lukewarm, half full, sometimes untouched. You scrape a spoonful of untouched steamed cod and osmanthus foam into the compost jar. It smelled heavenly, looked like a cloud, came back completely intact. The chef behind it sighs without sound and starts prepping mushrooms, because in the Imperial kitchen, leftovers speak louder than scrolls. They say everything, sometimes too much. You once saw a tray come back with only the garnish eaten. a slice of pickled tangerine. The duck untouched. The message was clear. Nice idea. Poor execution. Another time a bowl returned licked clean, but without the accompanying poem. Apparently the words were too forward. The chef behind it was sent to noodle duty for a month. You turn to dish 66 stuffed lotus root with black glutinous rice. A personal favorite. It came back half-eaten. A good sign. Someone reached the second bite. That's practically a review in this place. Tonight, though, you're not just watching the dishes return, you're tallying them. The taster records everything, what's missing, what's untouched, what was reordered. It's an invisible scorecard for everyone who's ever sliced a scallion in these walls. Dish 85 gone. Empty bowl, a small miracle. Dish 42. Still half there. Possibly too bitter. Possibly too early in the menu. Possibly just unlucky. Then there's dish 108, the final dish, the ceremonial broth. It always comes back empty. Not because it's eaten, because it's never served. The tray is placed beside the emperor, who glances at it once, then nods. Symbolism. Completion. The gesture of wholeness. He doesn't drink it. He never has. And yet, it's prepared every night. A pot of rich, clarified stock. Chrysanthemum petals. Ginseng. Jujube. Each flavor aligned with a part of the body, a virtue, a wish. You helped make it tonight. You remember how carefully you placed the floating white fungus, how still the broth looked when finished, like a pond under starlight? It will be discarded in silence. But the act of making it matters more than whether it's consumed. Historians still argue whether this dish was intended as actual food or simply as performance. Some call it the Emperor's Mirora dish, meant to reflect completeness. Others believe it was a test, would he reach for it? Break routine, display weakness. You wonder if the Emperor knows what it tastes like. You suspect he doesn't, and that's fine. The soup exists. That's enough. You turn back to the waste basin. One of the concubine's dishes returns peach blossoms, soaked in chrysanthemum honey. Barely touched. Too sweet. Or was the timing off? Wrong mood? You'll never know. But the plate is still beautiful. You don't feel bad scraping it out. Because in this kitchen, failure isn't always a mistake. It's just another ingredient. One you stir into tomorrow's broth. One you carve into the next radish blossom. Even the most perfect dumpling vanishes in one bite. But the memory of making it stays in your hands. You wipe down your station, stack the lacquered trays, whisper goodnight to the vinegar jar. Someone behind you hums a lullaby. Someone else sharpens a cleaver. The kitchen never sleeps. But for a moment it breathes. Soft. Steady. Still. You wake to the sound of the soup cauldron cracking. Not breaking, just a soft, echoing pop as the ceramic lid lifts with morning heat and decades of steam pressure. You know that sound. It's not a bad one. It means the broth is alive. It's dawn again. The final dawn of this meal cycle. The sun creeps through the upper lattice of the kitchen roof, spilling golden lines across your chopping block. You've lost track of time, but someone says this is the first day of the new solar term. Spring begins, or something equally poetic, which means the Emperor's breakfast must contain bamboo shoots, dried apricot, and a soup that tastes like anticipation. You reach for your apron. One last dish. Today's final course is ceremonial again, this time for an ancestral offering. A feast not for the Emperor himself, but for the spirits of those who came before. Their names are whispered as the broth simmers. Their memories are folded into dumplings. Their dignity is glazed in sesame and brushed with gold leaf. Dish 108 today is different. Dragon's breath tea. It's not tea exactly. It's a broth of pine nuts, dried jujube, longan fruit, and snow water. Served in a porcelain cup shaped like a dragon's claw. The liquid must be clear, no bubbles, no movement. You stir gently. Taste. Stir again. You feel calm. Maybe it's exhaustion. Or reverence. Or both. You pass the dish to the final taster who nods once as if acknowledging a secret only you two share. You watch it leave the kitchen in silence. Then you sit. Just sit. No one calls your name. No one needs garnish. No one is peeling lotus seeds right now. You breathe. Deeply. Slowly. You think about the meals you made. Not the ones remembered. Not the ones returned. Just the ones that were. You think about the duck tongue that curved just right. The tofu flour that made someone smile. The broth that no one drank, but that told its own story. You think about all the days you waited, watched, wondered, and still cooked. Because the Imperial kitchen, for all its pressure, is a temple. Not of ego, but of care. A place where meals outlive memory and silence says more than applause. You look at your hands, calloused, stained with ginger and plum. You smile, you did your part. You always do. And now you rest. Just for a moment. The fire's dim. The steam settles. You sit by the open window of the palace kitchen, a bowl of plain rice in your hands, warm against your palms. The sky is shifting purple into silver, dawn into day. And for once there is no rush. No tray waiting. No broth bubbling with hidden messages. Just quiet. You take a bite. It's soft, comforting, unseasoned, honest. The taste brings back memories not of the emperor or his concubines, not of the dishes carved like poetry or the dumplings, folded like secrets, but of your first day in the kitchen. Nervous, clumsy, burning everything, then learning, watching, repeating, becoming. The palace never truly sleeps, but for a moment it breathes slower. A single crane calls from the garden pond. A spoon clinks faintly in the distance. Someone laughs softly without urgency. You rest your bowl on your lap, close your eyes, and smile. Because no one will write your name in the scrolls, but your hands have fed history, one dish at a time. You open your eyes, stand, another day will come. Another 108 dishes will follow, but right now you are still and full. End of script. Sweet dreams.